Hi, fourth grade reading. I hope you guys are doing very well, and please know that I miss you all very much. Today, we are going to do another poetry lesson. I really enjoyed reading your history poems last week. Those were absolutely fabulous. We had topics from Hamilton to Washington. We had the Statue of Liberty, westward expansion, um, World War II, Pearl Harbor. They were absolutely incredible. And so I'm very proud of you for applying what you've learned in these lessons and creating your own original works of poetry. That is the ultimate goal of any lesson, is to create. So good job, thumbs up. Today, we're going to be learning about a new poet, and it's also a female. So we've had Emily Dickinson, and now we're going to study another poet who lived a little bit before Emily Dickinson, and her name is Mary Howitt. And I bet that you have heard of one of her poems before. It's called The Spider and the Fly. So I'm going to share my screen with you all, and you can see Mary Howitt. Okay. All right. So here she is. She is a very old looking woman in this photo, right? Um, by just looking at this photo, would you predict that she is writing funny, silly, humorous, light, cheery poems, or kind of creepy, dark, mysterious, cautionary tale poem? If you went with the second choice, you are right. And you might have guessed because her title is about a spider and a fly, and that's a little creepy, right? So, Mary Howitt, here's a little bit of information about her. She's an English poet, so not like Emily Dickinson, who was an American poet. Her most famous poem is The Spider and the Fly, and it was published in 1829. And so, what was happening in early American history in 1829? Well, what we're studying in history now, early westward expansion, okay? And the poem was turned into a picture book, actually, and it was illustrated by Tony Dietzerlisi. It's really hard to pronounce his name, it's Italian. And the book received a Caldecott Honor Award, which is an award that's given to talented, unique illustrations. You could see my dog Finnegan in the background. So she is very talented, and her poem, The Spider and the Fly, is kind of sounds like a fable. Okay, it's very similar, just it's a fable as a poem. Okay, here is the front of the book that was illustrated from her poem. And you can see the illustrations are wonderful. And you can see the two main characters, the fly and the spider here. We have two objectives while reading this poem today. The first objective is I can analyze the spider and the fly by conducting a close reading of the text. So we're going to break it down and try to find the deeper meaning. Objective number two, I can identify the theme of the spider and the fly. Okay? If you recall, the theme is the moral or the lesson to be learned at the end of the story. So those two things, we're going to analyze the poem, and we are going to identify the theme of the poem. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there, and I'm going to pull up the poem. Make sure you have it in front of you. Okay, The Spider and the Fly. Will you walk into my parlor, said the spider to the fly? 'Tis the prettiest little parlor that ever you did spy. The way into my parlor is up a winding stair, and I've a many curious things to show when you are there. Oh, no, 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 said the little fly, to ask me is in vain, for who goes up in your winding stair can ne'er come down again. I'm sure you must be weary, dear, with soaring up so high. Will you rest upon my little bed? Said the spider to the fly. There are pretty curtains drawn around, the sheets are fine and thin, and if you like to rest a while, I'll snugly tuck you in. "Oh, no, no," said the little fly, "for I've often heard it said, they never, never wake again who sleep upon your bed." Said the cunning spider to the fly, "Dear friend, what can I do to prove the warm affection I have always felt for you? I have within my pantry good store of all that's nice. I'm sure you're very welcome. Will you please to take a slice?" "Oh, no, no," said the little fly, "kind sir, that cannot be. I've heard what's in your pantry, and I do not wish to see." "Sweet creature," said the spider, "you're witty and you're wise. How handsome are your gauzy wings, how brilliant are your eyes. I've a little looking glass upon my parlor shelf. If you'll step in one moment, dear, you shall behold yourself." "I thank you, gentle sir," she said, "for what you're pleased to say, and bidding you good morning now, I'll call another day." The spider turned him round about and went into his den, for well he knew the silly fly would soon come back again. So he wove a subtle web in a little corner sly, and set his table ready to dine upon the fly. Then he came out to his door again, and merrily did sing, "Come hither, hither, pretty fly, with the pearl and silver wing. Your robes are green and purple, there's a crest upon your head. Your eyes are like the diamond bright, but mine are dull as lead." Alas, alas, how very soon this silly little fly, hearing his wily flattering words, came slowly flitting by. With buzzing wings she hung aloft, then near and nearer drew, thinking only of her brilliant eyes and green and purple hue, thinking only of her crested head. Poor foolish thing, at last! Up jumped the cunning spider and fiercely held her fast. He dragged her up his winding stair into his dismal den, within his little parlor, but she never come out again. And now, dear little children, who may this story read, to idle, silly, flattering words, I pray you ne'er give heed. Unto an evil counselor, close heart and ear and eye, and take a lesson from this tale of the spider and the fly. So you might be able to tell why this poem is so popular. Number one, we have personification. Anytime there are talking animals, the story is pretty much bound to be a hit. It draws us in, it captivates us to kind of get in the mind of these creatures that we see so often. Now, one of our objectives was to find the theme. Now, usually the theme is revealed towards the end of a story. So be thinking about what that theme might be and which stanza the theme shows up in. So what lesson can we learn from this cunning spider and this foolish fly? We're going to do a close reading of the spider and the fly, so make sure that you have your close reading sheet out. Number one says, how many stanzas are in the poem? There are 7 stanzas. Number two, how many lines are in each stanza? Stanzas 1 through 4, there are 6 lines. Stanzas 5 through 6, there are 8 lines. And stanza 7, there are 4 lines. So 6, 8, 4. Number 3, you had to label the rhyme scheme in stanza 2 and record the rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is AA, BB, CC all throughout the poem, which makes it have a strong pattern and rhythm. Number 4 says, write a few sentences to describe the structure of the poem. Okay, well, first let's talk about the style. The style of this poem is a narrative because it tells a story, right? Chronologically, it has a plot. It has exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Also, when they ask for the structure, they're looking for any patterns that might arise. So the structure of the poem is a narrative consisting of stanzas with an even number of lines, right? Because it goes 6, 8, and 4. Okay, let's get to our characters. Number 5, is the spider male or female? And kind of how do you know that? The spider is male, and I know this by the pronouns that are used, him, his, and sir. Is the fly male or female, and how do you know? The fly is female because it uses the pronouns her and she. Number 7 asks you to find or create character traits to describe the spider. I came up with 4. If you come up with different ones, that's okay too. For my spider character traits, I had cunning, sly, devious, and manipulative. And we'll discuss that last word, manipulative, in a bit. Number 8, find or create character traits to describe the fly. Okay, so they're kind of opposites. For the fly character traits, I came up with silly, foolish, vain, and naive. Now, I say that she's vain because she ultimately falls for all of the flattering compliments that the spider uses to try to get her into the parlor. And finally, number 9. The narrator doesn't reveal what exactly happens to the fly, but it can be inferred, right? It can be predicted of what happens to the fly. Well, if you didn't figure it out, the spider eats the fly, right? She is entangled in his cunning web. So that's our close reading. Another thing that we're going to do is to discuss the theme. So I'm going to share my screen with you once more. Give me 1 second. Desktop share. Okay. All right, so if you recall, the theme is the underlying message or the moral of the story, right? What is to be learned by the reader? So here's a great thorough answer to this question. The theme of The Spider and the Fly is the manipulation of the weak by the strong. The poem uses a situation from the non-human world in order to shed light on things in the human world. In the poem, a weak fly is manipulated by a strong spider. The spider naturally just wants to eat the fly, so in order to get the fly, the spider uses flattery and manipulation in order to get what he wants. The poem acts as a warning or like a cautionary tale for the innocent not to be manipulated by flattery. Okay, and so let's talk about these green words, manipulation and flattery. Manipulation means control or influence of a person or situation cleverly, unfairly, or unscrupulously. Okay, so if you've ever been in a situation where you know someone's trying to persuade you of something and they're being kind of sneaky about it, you might be being manipulated. You might be being, you might have been manipulated. And flattery, of course, is compliments, right? Another theme could be, right, don't be so foolish when you are interacting with strangers, right? Okay. And it's also a cautionary tale against vanity, right? The fly was so wooed and so caught off guard by the spider's compliments that she ultimately gave into it. And I have a question for you in the purple. What other genre of reading does this poem remind you of? I already gave you the answer earlier, but the genre is fables, right? Because we have 2 talking animals and we have a moral at the end, okay? All right, so that is The Spider and the Fly by Mary Howitt, an English poet, published in 1829. You were able to answer all of the questions in the close reading, and later in our Zoom, we're going to have a little comprehension quiz about the poem. Okay, so be ready for that at our next Zoom meeting. Okay? All right, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day and that you keep on writing poetry if you feel inspired. This one could be a poem you write that's inspired by Mary Howitt, could kind of be like a little bit creepy. It could be a conflict between 2 characters that are opposites, whatever you like. So keep writing and keep reading poetry. Bye, guys.